Why are there so many unhappy professionals? Like, you know how you come across people, they're seemingly doing well in their career, in their profession, but when you engage them one on one, when you get to have a personal conversation with them, you realize how dissatisfied they are. Hi guys, you're welcome to my channel. My name is Jennifer Ohanwe, and if this is your first time here, you're welcome big time. If you're a returning subscriber, I'm happy to have you back. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please feel free to click the subscribe button. I'll be glad to have you. So I have a question. Why are there so many unhappy professionals? Like, you know how you come across people, they're seemingly doing well in their career, in their profession, but when you engage them one on one, when you get to have a personal conversation with them, you realize how dissatisfied they are. I don't know about other fields, but I happen to be in the medical field. And some of the people I've also had conversations with within this field, they also have this level of dissatisfaction. In case you do not know, I am a doctor, a dental surgeon precisely, who trained here in Nigeria. And in my period of practice, I've come across a number of things that, I wasn't aware of. Like, nothing really prepared me for some of those things. Well, maybe I was partly prepared as an undergraduate because the training, the dental training or medical training, as the case may be, is quite tedious and intense. So, in the course of your training, you may have been built up for some of the things you'd encounter during practice, during real life practice. But regardless, nothing really prepares you for the practice like the practice itself. So, in this video, I'll just be sharing with you like some personal things I've noticed and some things I've come across in the course of doing this job or in this vocation that I didn't know about before. Some of them were things I knew, but I felt like, it can't be that bad. It's not that serious, right? Some of them are also things I didn't see coming. So I'll be sharing some of those things in today's video. The first thing is that the job can be very overwhelming. There is a lot of work, partly because of the brain drain. There aren't enough hands to attend to the many patients that come to the hospital. So you see one person doing 2 to 3 to 4 people's work. So imagine doing that kind of thing every single day. You're going to get worked up, you're going to get worked out, you're going to get exhausted, and it doesn't get any better. And depending on where you work, you may not have everything you need to work efficiently. So you see yourself trying to improvise, trying to think up, another healthy alternative in order to be able to give your patients the best possible care that is available. So all these things add to the stress that you experience as a doctor or as a healthcare provider, as the case may be. And there are days you just wake up with body pain and you cannot stay back at home because you're having body pain, because the next day when you eventually go to work and you do that cycle again, you're still going to come back with body pain. So are you going to keep staying at home for every day you feel you feel body pain? So you just have to find a way around it. I knew the work was tough. I knew the work required a lot of energy, but to an extent, you may not really understand till you get into the system properly. The second thing is that for every day you come to the hospital or you go to work as a healthcare provider, you're literally putting your life at risk. Why do I say so? There are a number of infectious diseases out there. And because these diseases are not usually tested for, like every time a patient comes to hospital, you don't ask them to go and run tests for, the merits of all the possible infectious diseases that they have. So if you're not careful as a healthcare provider, you could actually get infected with one or more of these diseases, right? And the sad part is that some of these diseases are not cheap to manage. Some of them require you to be flown abroad for very advanced medical care. And this brings me to the next thing I found out while on the job. In the case of offering care to a patient and you get an infection that requires very advanced medical care that is not obtainable within the country or that requires you to travel out, relying solely on your income, you may not be able to afford that treatment. And it's really disheartening because in the recent past, we've lost people who got infections like hepatitis B and they could not afford to pay for the advanced medical treatment that they need. So these are some of the challenges that, when you decide to go into this path, you don't really envisage them because you think you consider them really far-fetched. And sometimes getting these infections may not even be as a result of your own carelessness. Maybe someone uses a needle and doesn't discard it properly or doesn't place it in the sharp box, or the health assistants or the cleaners didn't do their due diligence in discarding the trash properly or at the right place. And then you have needles and sharps lying around. So you could just be doing your job and then some of these things just pierce through your skin, or you have blood spillage. Like, there's just a number of things that could possibly happen that may not necessarily be your fault. So basically, every day you come to work, you're putting your life at risk. And if you're to rely solely on your salary, you may not even be able to afford the kind of medical care that you'd require. The fourth thing is that I have to constantly show up, regardless of how I feel, whether I'm emotionally downcast, whether I'm having body pain, whether I'm having headache, because already there's limited manpower, right? So if alongside the limited manpower, you're also saying, oh, I need to take a break, and then imagine if every other person needs to take a break because of how overwhelmed they are, you're not going to have anybody providing healthcare. And then there are so many people who are also in need of this healthcare that you provide. It's not like when you were an undergraduate, when you're having headache, you can call in sick, you're stressed, you could just decide to stab your class. It's not really very obtainable in practice. And for any time you're not going to be at work, you have to give a very, very valid reason for your absence. The fifth thing is that I don't know if this is peculiar to this career path as a healthcare provider, or if this is something that also happens in other fields. But I've come to realize to an extent that sometimes the personal challenges of your trainers or of your seniors, they get rub off on you as a junior or as a subordinate. So if somebody is unhappy, right, the person has a way of spilling this bitterness everywhere. If someone is going through maybe midlife crisis, having family issues, it just has a way of showing up at work, right? And there are just few people who are able to handle their personal lives different from their work life. So if you have to be under someone who is dealing with something really personal that's eating them up, or stressing them out, chances are you'll be at the receiving end of whatever they're dishing out, right? And it is not a nice place to be at all. It is not a good place to be at all in any way. So before I start working, I don't know what is obtainable in other places. I used to have it in mind that people start working at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month they get paid. Well, when I started working, I found out it wasn't exactly that way. You could actually work 40 days and not get paid. So it's more or less like you start working this month and then you get paid towards the second week of the second month. So yes, that came to me as a shock. The next thing is that the workload, the amount of work you need to do, is not commensurate with what you're being paid. And I think it now makes sense to me when they say this profession is a vocation, it's more of a calling. Because if you're going to keep looking at, oh, how much am I being paid for the job that I'm doing, you're almost going to get discouraged. And if you get discouraged, it's also going to affect the quality of care that you give to your patients, right? Because these people are humans as well. So you're not going to say, oh, because I'm dissatisfied with my employers or people who are paying me, I'm not going to deliver my duties, I'm not going to discharge my duties efficiently or appropriately. So it makes a lot of sense now that this work is more of a vocation than it is a career. I don't know about people who are really, really advanced. Maybe people who are already established, have a lot of things going on for them. It may be a bit different for them. But at this point where I am, this is how I see it. The next thing is that you need a solid support system. Like, you cannot be a healthcare provider and not have a good support system around you, because you're just going to break down at some point. Imagine how you have to constantly give your time, your care, your attention. And you meet people who have debilitating conditions, life-threatening conditions. Sometimes you see people die, and you're human. Some of these people are people you've conversed with, people you've encouraged, people you've told that they are going to be fine. And then someday you just come and they tell you, oh, this person is no more. Sometimes you're going to get overwhelmed with all these emotions. And beyond the patient part, there's also the part where, because the work is overwhelming, you want to be able to go back home and have a safe space, right? I saw a Twitter post that said, you cannot do this doctor thing and still marry wrong, something like that, because it's going to be very frustrating. After working in the hospital, after attending to people, after literally pouring out yourself and doing the best you can for people, it's going to be very bad for you to go back home and then your home is like a war zone. It is such a bad idea. So it just helps ease up the burden. It helps you feel like, oh, you're actually working for something. Not just, of course, the people that you're dedicating your time to, they are people, but then these ones are your own, right? So it just provides succor, basically. And even if it's not family, it could be friends, people who can call you and say, what's up? How are you doing? How are you getting by? Hope this thing is not eating you up. Because these things, they matter. If as a healthcare provider, your routine is just to go to the hospital, come back, stay alone, sleep, wake up, go to the hospital the next day. At some point, you're going to get really tired. So there really has to be people who, people who are looking out for you, people who care about you. The next thing I found out, and even though this sounds really harsh, but then that's the truth, and that is one of the harsh realities of life. If you died in the course of discharging your duty, life would go on regardless, right? And it goes without saying, no one is indispensable. So, you just show up, do all the things you need to do, but just know that if you don't take care of yourself and something bad happens to you, God forbid, life will just go on. I mean, they'll have a moment of silence. They could immortalize you depending on how big you are or how deep your impact has been felt. But regardless, life is going to go on. But the people who will miss you most are your family and your friends, and then people who you've also made positive impacts in their lives. The next thing I found out is that depending on where you work, I mean, the workload is a lot, but most times it's not just about the workload, it's also about the people you're working with. So let's say you're working with people who are kind, people who are empathetic, people who are caring, people who are just very considerate, regardless of how much work you have to do, right? You would never really feel exhausted and drained of energy because you're working with a group of kind-hearted people. And I'm saying this from a place of experience. I've worked in a place that is very intense, like very, very intense. You're always on your toes. But funny thing was, I didn't really feel it that much because these people were some of the kindest people I've ever worked with. They were so considerate. I can't even find the adjective to use. They were very empathetic. And when it comes to efficiency and proficiency, they were so good with what they were doing. So, regardless of how much work we had to do, I always felt like we have a good set of people you were working with. And they were always understanding. They were not the ones making you feel like, oh, you're tired. You cannot be tired. They always understood that, okay, you're human. You've done so much. Okay, get some rest. Take some break. Okay, you can do this way. You can hold on with this one. And it made the job a lot easier. So what I found out in the course of this job is that it's not so much about the workload as it is about the people, right? If you work in a place where when you wake up in the morning, I remember you have to go to work, your belly tightens. It is a very bad sign that you're probably in the wrong place or you're working with the wrong set of people, right? Work should be something you look forward to doing, not something you're tolerating and you're dragging yourself on with. So depending on where you're working to, you may wake up some mornings and realize you're having palpitation at the thought of going to work. And it is not a good thing. It is not a good place to be at all. So now that I've listed all these things that I didn't know about my career, about being a healthcare worker, some of the things that came to me as a shock, how do you now go about it? You're not going to quit your job. I mean, I don't think it's easier in any part. I'm sure people from different walks of life also have their own challenges. And part of the reason I'm making this video is because usually I come on my YouTube channel to tell people how to live a healthier life. And then I have colleagues who are also providing healthcare to people, but then they're unable to take optimum care of themselves because they are constantly helping other people. So this video is made with them in mind. So what are the things I would suggest as someone who is also in the system? How have I been able to navigate some of these surprising things, and how do I just go about them? So the first thing you have to come to terms with is the fact that you're human. You're a human being. You're not a superhuman. You're a mere mortal. And that someday you will cease to exist. And if you died in the course of discharging your duty, you would deprive the people who care about you, the people who love you, the opportunity or the privilege of having you in their lives. So when you're called to discharge your duty as a healthcare provider, whether you're a doctor, you're a nurse, or whatever other role you play as a healthcare provider, make sure you wear your PPE, your personal protective equipment. While in school, they told us to treat every patient like someone who has a potentially infectious disease, because you really don't even know who has the disease or not. And you're not just protecting yourself from the patient, you're also protecting the patient from yourself, because who says the healthcare provider cannot be the one who can infect the patient? So it's a two-way thing. Remember, you have family that love you, people who care about you. Don't throw caution to the wind. Don't try to play the superhero, and do things that you're not supposed to do. The next thing you can do is to get vaccinated. For as many infectious diseases that have their vaccines, take them, right? Take them and protect yourself. If not for anything, for your family and for the people who care about you and the people that love you. The next thing is to have an extra source of income. Of course, this shouldn't be something that interferes with your primary job as a healthcare provider. You should find a way to incorporate it seamlessly without it having to eat into the time that you use in attending to your patients. That way, when you have an extra source of income, you know that you're not doing this job solely because of the money, right? And if you're not doing it solely because of the money, it brings a form of detachment. So whether the money comes at the time it's supposed to come or it doesn't, you're just doing your job, right? You're not feeling like, these people have not paid me, why will I do this? Because somehow you're being sustained by the other thing you have going on for you because of the place we live in, depending on where you work as a healthcare provider. There are times your salary will not come at the time you expect it to come, right? And you're not going to suddenly stop coming to work. You're going to show up because you're hoping that the money would eventually come. And when the money eventually comes, how do you feel up for the days that you've been absent from work? So you have to constantly show up. The next thing is to learn to take care of yourself. I want to say this. Many healthcare providers do not take care of themselves because they are constantly taking care of other people. Oh, I'm having body pain, but let me just finish this work. I'm having headache. Oh, let me just, just round off. And then you keep going on and on and on and keep stretching yourself one bit at a time. And before you know it, you exceed your yielding point, and that's it. So you have to make deliberate efforts, eat healthy. Sometimes we leave for work very early in the morning. I, for one, I know I don't eat breakfast, and then I walk all through the day and come back only for me to eat bread. I know I do that. So I'm saying this, and as I'm saying this, I'm also reminding myself, I'm cautioning myself, you have to make deliberate effort to eat healthy, right? This money you're earning from this job you're doing, spend that money on yourself. Use it to eat healthy, right? Eat good food, work out, do things that make you happy. Eating healthy helps boost your immunity. You already know that. And spend time with people you love. It's still part of self-care. Spending quality time with people you love, people who care about you. Don't try to be the Superman that just works 24/7 and doesn't have time for any other thing that is not work. It is unhealthy. When you eventually make that money and you break down and they can't find you tomorrow, life will go on, and people who will have access to that money may not even know how much work you put in to get it. So take some time to spoil yourself once in a while. If you can afford to do it as often as you can, but at least once in a while, take time to spoil yourself. You deserve it. You have worked really, really hard. Try and draw a line between your personal life and work. And by drawing a line between your personal life and work, I also mean that even when people try to project their negative energy or their own personal life dissatisfaction onto you, just be able to know that these people are going through their own personal stuff, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with you. It's just them battling their own demons. And you can put them in your prayers and all of that, but don't personalize what people who are dissatisfied with their life, don't personalize what they do. Understand that these people are dealing with stuff, right? And these things they're doing doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you. And when you're able to draw that line, when you go back home, you're not carrying so much grudge and the baggage from work and all of that and the negative energy back to your family, and start transferring the aggression to your family and your loved ones. So be able to draw the line. Understand that your colleagues at work are not your friends, they are your colleagues at work. Whatever you have with them should be at work, except for people who you've been able to establish friendship with outside of work. Then you can say that, okay, this person, in as much as I met him or her at work, we've been able to build solid friendship, and then I can consider this person a friend. Else, you'll be setting yourself up for a lot of headache. The next thing you can do is to make it your responsibility to build the life you want. I keep saying it, this is real life. This is not a dress rehearsal. Like, this is it. All we have is now, right? This is the time to build the kind of life you want 30 to 40 years from now. So if you're doing something maybe in your career or whatever it is, and you're convinced that this is not where you want to be decades from now, this is also the time to start putting in the effort so that you can be where you want to be decades from now. It's not going to happen like magic. So start putting in effort. If you don't do that, the implication is that years down the line, decades down the line, you're going to look at yourself and be so dissatisfied with where you are. And before you know it, that dissatisfaction is also going to reflect on how you treat your subordinates and people who are under you, or your employees, as the case may be. And you end up being the same way the people you once complained about were at the time. So these are some of the things you can do. Finally, do something that takes you out of yourself, right? I've talked about the fact that I don't think it's right for your routine to be go to work, come back to the house, go to work, come back to the house. That's a boring routine. Of course, fun means different things to different people. So whatever that is fun to you, you may be lying down on your bed. If that is what you find recreational, that's fine. But there has to be something you do that makes you feel good. If it's playing soccer, if it's going to the gym, if it's having time out with your girls or your guys, whatever it is, but there has to be something that you do that takes you out of yourself, something that helps you relieve the stress from work so that you can have a balanced and wholesome life. In your practice, choose to specialize in a department that you find interesting, something that you're interested in. You can add value to people's lives. You can, just whatever it is, there are a myriad of things people can do to make them happy. So, whatever it is for you, just indulge yourself in it because this is your life and this is real life. You cannot live miserably because of your chosen career path. So, find a way to make it work for you. I'm sure some of the things I mentioned here are not peculiar to people in the health sector. Whatever sector you're in, I'm sure there's something you can take away from this video. So let me know in the comment section if there was anything I said that resonated within you. And if you're working in a very intense sector that is also understaffed or that has limited manpower, let me know how you navigate the overwhelming nature of the job that you do. If you found this video worth your while, you can hit the subscribe button and turn on your post notifications so you get notified every time I post new videos. Remember to live happily and find joy even in the very little things. And see you in my next video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Bye!